Hey, it's Huck. It is summer. It's like 95 degrees outside, has been all month. And I gotta tell you, thank God for Stranger Things. The new Netflix series, Stranger Things. More on that in a moment. First, let me explain that summer has always been my favorite time of the year. I mean, always. And I used to love the hot weather. But I'll tell you, it's hard for me to breathe now when I go outside and it's this warm. And a lot of these days, there hasn't been much of a breeze. So it forces me indoors. I have the air conditioning on, but the truth is there's just not much entertainment to be had indoors in the summer. So what do you do in the summer? Well, I mean, you could go on your computer. You could, check out your social media. But come on. I mean, I'm one of those people that I don't post anything on Facebook. Very, very rarely. But what I will do is maybe once or twice a day I'll get on and I'll just see what other people have posted. And what are people posting? Well, I don't know about you, but I mean, I have seen so many, pictures of deformed babies that say, oh, this person's got this congenital disease, type amen. First of all, amen means so be it, right? So, I mean, that's the last thing you should be typing. Or there are all these things on Facebook where they show, these wonderful new products, that look like they cost $1,500 or $15,000. And, oh, we're giving this away. Just like, share, and type done. Really? I mean, how gullible do you think we are? If there is a God, He's got to be looking down at Facebook postings thinking, 4 billion years. I had such high hopes. So, thank God for Stranger Things. There are 8 episodes to this series called Stranger Things. 8 episodes, that's how Netflix does it. They will launch an entire season all at once and throw out all the episodes, and allows you to just kind of watch them at your leisure. You can watch them all at one time or pace yourself any way you want. But there it is, the whole season, boom, in one shot. And so, they've had some success with another series that I'm trying to slowly go through. It's a little dark, but it's political, so I like it. It's called House of Cards. Everybody's probably familiar with that. And I'm about, 5 or 6 episodes into season 3 right now, so I have been watching that. It's not as good and fun as West Wing years ago. This is, like I say, a lot darker. It's different, but it's interesting, and so, but other than that, there's not a whole lot on Netflix that I've really taken to. But Stranger Things is a whole different ballgame here. It is, without question, the best thing I've seen on TV, well, since Game of Thrones. Now, Stranger Things is pretty much unlike anything we've seen on TV or on film, really, for almost 30 years, in that it really does have an 80s feel to it. And when I say an 80s blockbuster appeal to it, it really does pay homage in an intentional way to some of the early works of Steven Spielberg and Stephen King. You cannot watch even an episode of this show without feeling its kinship with shows like E.T., with shows like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, or Artificial Intelligence, AI, all Spielberg's works. Flight of the Navigator is another movie that I think you will see. Even to a lesser extent, a film like Jaws. The show centers around a very young cast for the most part. It's anchored by a group of young boys, and all around 11, 12 years old, I would assume. And one of these 4 boys has turned up missing. And part of this series is devoted to the other three boys, trying to find out what happened to him. They are aided in that search by, to me, the breakout star of the entire series, a girl of about their age. And the show, her character's name is 11, and she's played by a remarkable young actress named Molly Bobby Brown. Molly Brown gives a just stunning performance in a rather demanding role, which requires her to do almost everything by expression, as she has very, very few lines in the film, and when they are, they come out usually 1 or 2 words at a time, and that's about it. The girl 11 has been kept in a government facility where for years, basically all her life, she has been the guinea pig tool of a somewhat mad scientist. After medical experiments that actually did happen in the 50s through the early 70s involving volunteer test subjects for mind expansion experiments with the use of psychedelic drugs, largely LSD, she is the offspring of one of those volunteers. 11 lives in a dark world where she has been held captive by the NSA version of Dr. Joseph Mengele. And she has not developed any social skills. She's not developed really much of a vocabulary. And so most of the film, the young actress has to go through this part largely using expression to convey the various feelings and challenges that she has dealt with, both in the flashback scenes that show her as a captive guinea pig, and now hiding and trying to avoid recapture from those same people while she's helping these kids find their friend. It's just a totally remarkable performance. Other notable performances in this are by Winona Ryder, who plays the mother of the missing boy, and David Barber, who plays the sheriff. And again, one of the things that I think you'll find parallels many of Spielberg's earlier films are how these characters develop from episode to episode to episode. They are all really well written, well developed, and you learn a little bit more about each character with each passing episode until they're more completely fleshed out. And the sheriff, played by actor David Barber, is, I think, maybe one of the best examples of that. When we first see him, you know, he looks like a guy that's just collecting a paycheck and doesn't really want to be bothered. It's a quiet little town where nothing has ever happened of any serious consequence. And so when a boy turns up missing, he assumes it's just a kid that's, you know, playing hooky and staying out against his mom's wishes for an extra day with a friend, or at worst maybe ran away and is more than likely going to turn up anyway. To see his progression, and more importantly, to see what motivates him as he learns more about what's really going on in his town, is fascinating to watch. Winona Ryder's performance, I think, reminds me most of Richard Dreyfuss in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Here's a person who is seeing things and experiencing things that nobody else can see or experience. And so acts as crazy can be to everybody looking at her. She knows it, and she doesn't care. She is completely obsessed and absolutely certain that she is talking to and communicating with her son. And of course, everybody thinks she's crazy. And this is, parallel very much to Richard Dreyfuss's character in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where he is getting signals and he is seeing images and he is getting a message to tell him to go somewhere. And everybody thinks he's nuts. So don't be surprised as you're watching through these episodes where you will see little things like a Jaws poster on one of the kids' rooms and any number of other details that tell you that the directors here, the co-creators of this series, the Duffy brothers, are intentionally paying homage to Spielberg, to Stephen King, and to so many of the others that whose earlier works back in the 80s so envelope this whole series. And it should be noted that the series takes place in 1983. That's the setting for this. So expect lots of nostalgia from that era. Now, I was born and raised, I was raised in the 60s, basically, was my childhood. But, I'm very familiar, obviously, with the 80s as well. And so I think anybody my age, right up through the 80s, is going to relate to the nostalgic feel of this movie. Anyway, I can't give this series a high enough rating. Now, there are really few weak areas of the movie. Casting, brilliant. The suspense sequences, brilliant. Pacing, absolutely on top of their game. The one area where I would say it's weakest is when they paint their villains. And there are villains in this, as of course any great suspense thriller will. In this case, I don't want to give it all away, but there's an evil scientist played by Matthew Modine, who gained his fame in the 80s as a teenager. He is cast brilliantly as the mad scientist in this, working for the government, conducting these experiments. And ruthless and two-faced, I guess, is putting it lightly. I would have liked to have seen them draw that a little more. And not that they don't show plenty of flashbacks of this guy, but they don't really show a lot about what drives this man, what motivates him to do the things he's doing. And I would have liked to have seen a lot more than that. We are, of course, talking about another dimension here as well. And within that dimension of death and decay, there is a whole nother sort of antagonist. And I think one of my criticisms of this series is that I think it's I think that portion of the film, if you will, has not been fleshed out much at all. It kind of goes back to almost a cartoonish stereotype of the boogeyman, if you will. Not that it's not scary, just that it's not. Again, there's no background, there's no detail, and so that's one of the areas where I think I would like to see more. Now, there very likely will be a series continuation here. I know all of the reviews that I've seen, all of the criticism I've seen of this series has given it two big thumbs up. So it's certainly getting critical acclaim. I've really not seen anything negative from anyone that's seen it, and that bodes well. So I am fairly certain that we will see a season 2, and they have already talked about how it will pick up, more or less ongoing. And there are certainly, if you watch this to its end, and if you're like me, now when I watched it, I was so taken with it. I stayed up until like 4:30 in the morning. I watched the first 6 episodes in a row, and I only shut it off because I didn't want it to end that quick. So, I forced myself to turn it off and go to bed. And then even the next day, I was so anxious to watch it, I forced myself to wait until it was nearly evening so that, it would have its full impact on me. And then, a couple of days later, my friend, Dustin, who, Dustin comes over here once a week to cut my grass, and it's been so hot he hasn't had to do that lately. But he was coming over every week, to watch Game of Thrones when the season was on. And, of course, that's over. And when the playoffs were going on, he was coming over to watch the Cavs game. And, of course, that's over. Go Cavs. But so there hasn't been a whole lot of reason for me to run over, pick up Dut, and bring him over here. But I was so anxious for him to see this series that, I brought him over here a few nights after I completed watching it. And, was really hoping that he would like it. And I didn't have anything to worry about. We watched 4 episodes back to back to back to back. And then, for the same reason, he said he wanted to stop right there because he didn't want it to end. He wanted to have something to look forward to. It's kind of like Christmas, when you have something to anticipate, the anticipation's often as fun or more fun than the gift itself. When you're watching a really good television series like this, you don't want it to end. And the only thing worse than, coming to the end is, knowing that you got to wait a year, for it to start back up again. So, anyway, I have that to look forward to, for him to come back over here and watch the final 4 episodes. And this is, I can tell you, because now I've done it, this is one of those series where you can go back and watch it over again, even though you know what's going to happen. It's just as fun the second time. So, anyway, I give it my 4 full stars. Stranger Things. It's so good, in fact, that it is worth all of the hassle of signing up for Netflix, which, as I understand it, they give you a 30-day free trial anyway, so you're not really risking much. I'll be honest with you, you're not going to find a whole lot else on Netflix, at least I haven't, it's going to be worth the whatever they charge you a month. And my problem now is that when my year subscription is up, I now have a reason that I may want to subscribe. And that's not good, but because I can't afford it. But, I guess we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Anyway, hey, I'm Huck. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again real soon.